In 1991, Formula 1 was introduced to a new blonde-haired driver from Finland with a cute quiff and a dazzling smile. This was a guy who should have beaten Schumacher at the prestigious Macau Grand Prix, but had the win taken from his grasp when Michael pulled a very questionable move to block the Finn.
さあスリップに入っていますハッキネン。さあ勝負。あっなんてことでしょう。いやーこれはもったいない。ハッキネンとしてはどうしようもないですね。
I've seen this one. This is a classic.
But nonetheless, Häkkinen's junior career was impressive, with wins in 4 series, with the best one being the British Formula 3 crown. He may have lost to Schumacher in 1990, but the pair would have a much bigger prize to compete for in the following years. Häkkinen got his first taste of Formula 1 when he joined a fading Lotus team in 1991. This wasn't the same Lotus of the 60s and 70s. The team was a shadow of its former self. Häkkinen was teamed up with the unknown Brit Julian Bailey, in which he outperformed him 2 points to 1. Yes, 2 points to 1. This is how bad Lotus had fallen in recent times. Lotus switched engine supplier from Judd to Ford for 1992, along with replacing Bailey with a younger looking Johnny Herbert. 1992 also saw his former German rival get a permanent seat at Benetton after a very impressive cameo at Jordan. The engine change seemed to revitalise things at Lotus, as Häkkinen was able to challenge for points on a regular basis and even grabbed 2 fourth places at France and Hungary. The young Finn finished with an impressive 11 points in 1992, while the respected Johnny Herbert only managed 2. Häkkinen caught the eye of McLaren team principal Ron Dennis, as the Woking outfit snapped him up as a reserve driver for 1993, behind the late great Senna and 1991 kart champion Michael Andretti. Like many kart drivers, Andretti found it hard to adapt to Formula 1, and left after 13 races, giving Häkkinen the chance to show his skill set at the front of the grid, which he certainly did, out-qualifying the qualifying king first time round. He only had 3 races to perform in 1993, and 2 of them were DNFs, but a maiden podium in Japan backed up his first qualifying performance in Portugal. But then Senna would then subsequently leave for Williams for 1994, in which Martin Brundle took his place. And McLaren made a poor decision which would badly affect their car performance for 94. They swapped from Ford engines to Peugeot, and let's say it didn't go exactly as they planned. The team dropped another 2 places in the constructors to 4th, but Häkkinen impressed with his machinery once again, beating a talented Brundle 26 points to 16. All the while, his German compatriot had won his first F1 title in very, very dodgy circumstances.
Hill goes by. Oh, out goes Schumacher. The German is out.
You know, you gotta either be blind or stupid to not see me, but you know, it's racing.
For 1995, McLaren once again switched engine supplier, this time to Mercedes, who were looking to make a big comeback to the sport. Yep, yet another poor season for McLaren, as they weirdly dropped Brundle for 42-year-old Nigel Mansell, who subsequently led the team after 2 races and was replaced by Mark Blundell. Häkkinen beat Blundell, but only by 4 points, but he did miss 3 races due to an appendix operation, and also suffered a very scary incident in the season finale in Australia. His car suffered a tyre failure during the event's first qualifying session on Friday, which resulted in his car becoming airborne and crashing sideways into a barrier at over 120 miles per hour. The session, to no one's surprise, was suspended, with Häkkinen being critically injured due to sustaining a skull fracture, internal bleeding and a blockage of his airway. He was subsequently rushed to hospital, where he then stayed for 2 months and finally made a full recovery. But would he be the same man behind the wheel for 1996? The Finn had yet another new teammate. This time it was Scotsman David Coulthard. And 96 started well for him, qualifying 5th in the season opener in Australia, 1.6 seconds off pole sitter Jacques Villeneuve in the much superior Williams, while his new teammate Coulthard was all the way down in 13th, showing Häkkinen really hadn't lost it after all. And overall in 1996, Häkkinen came 5th in the standings on 31 points compared to Coulthard's 18. So in his F1 career, remarkably, he had still yet to lose a teammate battle, but he had still yet to beat Schumacher in the standings, who was now a 2-time world champion and moved to Ferrari in 1996 to to bring them back to glory. In 1997, McLaren finally produced a car worth challenging for wins. A car which could finally see MIKA take to the top step in Formula 1. And in the opener in Australia, McLaren won the race. However, it wasn't Häkkinen on the top step, but his teammate David Coulthard, as Häkkinen had to settle for third. This was a very promising start for McLaren though. Their car did have good pace, but the reliability was very poor, with Häkkinen and Coulthard both struggling to finish 50% of the races that year. Coulthard actually won again, this time in Monza, as Häkkinen finished outside the points, and at some points it actually looked like Coulthard may be the driver that McLaren would want to focus on after all. But then came Jerez, the final race to an enthralling 1997 season, and all eyes was on the championship battle between Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari and Jacques Villeneuve in the Williams. And Schumacher led by 1 point going into the final race, and it was going to be a spectacle to behold for all F1 fans. Jacques Villeneuve was on pole for the race, but in bizarre circumstances, as him, Schumacher and Jacques' teammate Frentzen all lapped the same exact time. But since Villeneuve recorded his time first, he was one who took pole. As if the drama couldn't get any better.
Villeneuve is all over him, look, he's going through! Oh yes! I don't think...
Out goes Michael Schumacher!
That didn't work, Michael, you hit the wrong part of him, my friend.
Well, in hindsight, this race was very, very underrated, and unexpectedly, this created a huge chance for MIKA Häkkinen. Him and Coulthard had merely been passengers in the race, but with suspected damage, Villeneuve took the rest of the race slowly after the collision with Schumacher. This allowed Häkkinen to catch up and overtake, which saw him take his very first win in Formula 1, where a few tears were shed on the podium, as there were smiles all round, well, except the Ferrari camp looking very bleak. So by the end of 1997, Häkkinen's record in Formula 1 was 1 win, 16 podiums, 1 pole position, and defeated his teammates 6 out of 7 times. Surprisingly losing to David in 1997, McLaren gained a huge asset when they snapped up Adrian Newey as their new car designer for 1998. He was able to take advantage of new regulations and built an absolute beast. Ferrari had also built a good car capable of challenging for the championship. So finally, the Häkkinen and Schumacher rivalry reignited after 8 long years. Häkkinen and Schumacher would trade wins all season, as the championship battle would come down to the final race in Japan. And after the penultimate race at the Nürburgring, Häkkinen led Schumacher in the standings by 4 points. Schumacher struck the first blow in search for his 3rd title and first with Ferrari as he got pole, but the German agonisingly stalled before the race began and had to go to the very back of the grid. The lights went out and Häkkinen led into the first corner unchallenged. Although Schumacher fought through the pack valiantly, it was in vain, as the German picked up a puncture after running over some debris on the track and had to retire. Häkkinen was champion, and to rub salt into the wound, he passed Schumacher on the final lap.
He's got his hand in the air, takes him over the line.
MIKA Häkkinen literally goes downhill to victory. Look at the joy, the euphoria of the McLaren team on the left. And you are looking at the world champion of 1998.
Going on to 1999, it was a very similar situation, where the rivalry would continue. We were set for another enthralling title battle, as once again Schumacher and Häkkinen were trading win for win. And then came Silverstone. While in practice, Schumacher crashed at the high-speed Stowe corner. His car's rear brake failed, sending him off the track into the barriers and resulting in a broken leg, ruling the German out for the foreseeable future. You would think Häkkinen would have strolled to the title, but a mix of bad fortune and rookie mistakes left Ferrari's second driver Eddie Irvine and for a while Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Jordan challenge for the 1999 world title. Schumacher returned later that year at the Malaysian Grand Prix and showed he was still the same class by taking pole position by just under a second. Irvine won in Malaysia due to some Ferrari team orders, which meant he led Häkkinen by 4 points going into the final race. Yet again in Japan, where Michael took pole once again. He didn't stall this time, but that didn't stop Häkkinen from leading into the first corner for the 2nd consecutive year. Schumacher was the only man able to keep up with the flying Finn, as he was determined to win his second title. Irvine was in third for most of the race, but was so far behind the team orders couldn't even be made. And so, Häkkinen became a double world champion. And out of nowhere really, he had the same titles as Michael. So 2000, a new millennium, and the most hyped up season in F1 in years. Two titans of the sport, battling it out to become a triple world champion. Unfortunately, MIKA had a torrid start to the season, not finishing the first two races of the season and not winning his first race until the 5th round in Spain. This was all the while Schumacher won the first 3 races of 2000, but it became tit for tat between the two mid-season, and then the drivers arrived in Belgium for the annual race at Spa-Francorchamps. At this time, Häkkinen actually led the championship by 2 points to Michael, and things began to heat up, with David Coulthard also in the mix, as he was only 4 points off Schumacher. MIKA took pole by 7 tenths, while Schumacher only qualified 4th. Schumacher was set up for the race though, and started well, and while putting the Finn under a bit of pressure, Häkkinen spun and gifted the lead to his rival. The chase was on. Almost in no time, the reigning world champion was on the heels of Schumacher, and on the 40th lap, on the fastest part of the track, Häkkinen went for a move down the inside of Michael, and at a speed of over 190 miles per hour, Michael swiftly shut the door. A controversial move which was severely disliked by Häkkinen. Next lap, it was the same situation, except this time there was a backmarker in the way. Schumacher pulled to the outside of Zonta, while Häkkinen dived down the inside of Zonta and took the lead of the race in breathtaking style. Häkkinen went on to win the race, extend his lead on Schumacher, lectured the German on his dirty defending, and also had a nice post-race interview to top it all off.
Great overtaking maneuver, and I loved it. I'm not sure if the Michael did.
But this overtake alone shows the everlasting class of MIKA Häkkinen. However, he would go on to lose the championship that year, as Michael had a rich run of form, winning all of the remaining 4 races, and took his 3rd championship in the penultimate race in Japan. Could Häkkinen bounce back in 2001? It turned out that he could not. A very unlucky season in all for Häkkinen, as he was beaten for the 2nd time by David Coulthard. The Scotsman finished a career high 2nd with 65 points, while Häkkinen only managed 5th with 37 points, as Schumacher ran away with that year's championship. Häkkinen did have double the DNF tally of his teammate, and most of them came down to the car. And this 2001 season would turn out to be Häkkinen's last in Formula 1, as although he agreed to take a sabbatical for 9 months with McLaren, this turned into a full retirement soon after, with his final victory ending up being in Indianapolis, and his 11-season career came to an end. But in those 11 seasons, Häkkinen raced in 161 races, won 2 world championships, won 20 races, stood on the podium 51 times, and racked up 26 pole positions. A fine driver in which Schumacher said himself was his toughest opponent in Formula 1, and that in itself says 1,000 words. Häkkinen was only 33 when he left, so it is a shame we couldn't have seen a few more seasons of him. A well and truly underrated Formula 1 legend.